know about you, but I spend an awful lot of my time sitting still. For those of us who work at home especially, we don't have the forced movement of going to work every day, and sometimes I can literally go days without stepping outside my front door. Never before have humans been so sedentary, at least in the Western world, and that is, I think, even more true of those of us who do work at home. I remember when I first started working from home and being self-employed, I went from a job where I was on my feet for hours and hours every day, where I had to commute to work and then I was walking around, I was in education, to a job where I would literally sit in a chair at a desk or my jewellery bench for up to 16 hours a day. In fact, in that first year or so of being self-employed and working like this, I gained something like 10 kilos, and I hadn't really changed my diet or anything like that. I just wasn't getting that incidental exercise, and honestly, I wasn't getting deliberate exercise at that point either. I was so focused and obsessed with my work that I just completely let my physical health go by the wayside. Since then, of course, I've changed a lot. I've learned so much about the importance of movement and physical exercise to our health and mental well-being. Now, this was 12 years ago when I went full-time self-employed, so it's been a long time and I've learned a lot in that time. And that's why one of the books I wanted to talk about is this one called Move by Carolyn Williams. It's subtitled The New Science of Body Over Mind. My aim in writing this book was to combine their experiences, and she's talking about the people she has interviewed for the book, with a growing scientific understanding of what movement does to the mind, and convince myself and everybody else to put the body and the way we move it at the center of our quest for health, happiness, and overall well-being. This was something I accidentally found out by myself over the last 12 years. It started for me with yoga, and the reason that yoga worked so well for me at the time, and still works to this day, but why I really got into it, was I discovered that when I practiced yoga, my mind had to focus on something other than my work, because I would constantly, from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep, I would constantly be thinking about my work, and nothing apart from reading a novel would actually take me away from that mentally. But when you're doing a physical practice like yoga, you have to use your mind to focus the body. You have to use the mind and the body in concert in order for it to work properly. And of course, with yoga, it's not only the mind and the body, but the breath, and getting all of those three things in sync. So by practicing yoga, I realized that I could calm my mind and make it relax and focus on something other than my work, which at the time I was really stressed, and it was an absolute godsend to be able to do that. Now, Caroline references that in the book. She mentions this: the need to take the mind out of the head and put it back in the body is a theme that links pretty much all movement research to improved overall well-being. It works because focusing on the body forces you into the present and brings attention to bodily sensations that may signify the need for action. So great examples of this are things like gentle dancing, yoga, tai chi, anything where you have to link the body and the mind to move the body in very deliberate ways. Conversely, and funnily enough, the opposite is actually also true. Sometimes we need to detach the mind from the body and allow it to do its own thing. And again, movement is a great way to do this. Movement can free the mind from focusing on what's in front of it and allow it to drift. I don't know about you, but I have had some of my best creative ideas when I've been either walking or swimming, because my body, I don't have to think about what my body's doing in space. It's just doing its thing. It's a rhythmic, repetitive movement, which requires zero conscious input for me to actually do. It's the same sort of thing like when you're in the shower, because you're just in the shower, and most people have a pretty, automated sort of habitual way of having a shower. So your body's busy doing its thing, and while that's happening, your mind is free to roam in a way it's often not in everyday life, because we are so addicted to these, amongst other things, and every moment in regular everyday life where you're not forced to be doing something else. So in the shower, on a walk, if you're not listening to a podcast, of course, it's a moment for your mind to just be free, and that is what we need in order to have creative ideas. The other one, of course, is before you go to sleep, is a common one. because that's another moment where you stop and your body is still and you're not looking at something or reading something or watching something, and your mind has a chance to actually drift. In the book, she talks about the famous example of Charles Darwin, who had a thinking path on his property, and he would go out there every day and walk and just think, and that's where he got so many of his amazing ideas and made some of the connections that we take for granted today as knowledge. I mean, by the time I read this book, I was already convinced of the power of movement in so many different ways. There have been numerous books over the years. The one that comes to mind always for me is the book called Spark. That was the book that taught me about the biochemistry of the brain when you exercise and how much of an impact it has on your mental well-being and your mental state. And that was an absolute game changer for me, because as someone with a history of depression and anxiety, I didn't know how I could basically manufacture my own feel-good chemicals in my brain through just doing some exercise. But why this book is so great is because she talks about all the different types of movement. So it goes into scientific detail about how different types of movement have different effects on the body. I'm going to share with you some fun facts at the end of this video that I gleaned from this book. But before we get to that, the basic takeaway and my biggest takeaway from this is just that you need to move more. You need to stretch. We need to strengthen ourselves. We need to strengthen our heart. We need to walk. We need to dance. We need to swim. Whatever it is for you, but there are some fundamental types of movement that we need to do. The more often we move and the more different types of movement we can incorporate into our lives, the happier and healthier we'll be, both mentally and physically. And not only that, we're going to be more productive and more creative, which, if you're here watching this, is probably something you're interested in. So let me share with you some simple ideas for getting more movement into your day, especially if you, like me, work from home. The first one is to do some sort of movement first thing in the morning. This can be something as simple as a 5 or 10 minute Tai Chi or yoga routine. It can be walking up and down the house 10 times. It doesn't really matter. Find something that works for you and do it regularly. For me, I've started a habit of doing some yoga first thing in the morning. Now, yoga for me is something that's kind of fallen out of my routine because I do various other types of physical activity almost every day, but I wanted to find a way to fit it back in. So I've committed to doing just like 10 minutes in the morning, first thing before I get to work. And it just feels so amazing to do that small amount of movement. Another one is to just get out of your chair more often and stretch. So like every 30 minutes to an hour, you should be standing up and moving around. If you forget, like I do, because you get stuck in your work, set an alarm or, use your smartwatch. A lot of these now have things you can turn on to remind you to get up and move every hour, so you're not just sitting there for hours and hours on end. Sometimes I'll just walk to my kitchen to get a glass of water, or I might do a couple of laps of my hallway. Whatever it is, it's just something to get yourself up and get yourself moving, and that will help the body, to relax, but also help the mind to be more active and wake it up a little bit more. This is especially important for those of you like me who don't ingest caffeine to keep me awake and productive. Another idea is to institute the habit of a daily walk. This is like so easy and so low key, and finding a time every day to do this and making it a habit and a routine is a great way to get your exercise in, perhaps, increase your creativity and your productivity, and also get you out of the house and get you some fresh air rather than just being stuck inside all the time. Personally, I like to take a walk at the end of the day, just before dinner time. Now, I don't cook the dinner, so that works for me. If I had to cook the dinner, that would be a different story. In summertime, when the days are longer, I will go for my walk after dinner. So just having that daily routine. And for me, it's a decompress at the end of the day. I get out of the house, I get out into nature, I see other human beings. I usually listen to a podcast, although sometimes I'll just not listen to anything and just be. And it's such an important part of my day now that I really hate it when I miss it. And of course, ideally, you would have some sort of workout schedule or routine, because doing some targeted exercise is going to do wonders for your mind and your body. Personally, I do a workout 5 days a week, and I do that between the end of my workday and my walk. So On the days where I do my workouts, I finish work and then I do my workout and then I go for my walk. So that works really well for me because I do that high intensity workout and then I kind of chill and cool down with my walk, and that's pretty much the only sort of like dedicated cardio I do, although I do a HIIT session every so often as well. But that's my main sort of cardio type of exercise, although really, walking is more movement than exercise. I guess it depends on how brisk you do it. My afternoon walks, I'll be honest, they're usually more like saunters. And I'm a pretty slow walker anyway, just naturally. It's so funny, whenever I'm anywhere with Nick, I have to constantly remind him to slow down because he's like a natural fast walker and I'm a natural slow walker. So we're always like at different speeds. Those are all techniques that I use and that you could use too in order to incorporate movement into your day, even if you only have a little bit of time to do it. If you're interested more in the science behind movement, how it affects you and how different types of movement affect you differently, then I definitely recommend having a read of this book. It's very accessible, it's fun to read, and I really, really enjoyed it. Now, are you ready for 5 fun facts to finish off the video? Number 1, have you ever heard of pandiculation? It's that stretching we and all animals do when they've been sitting or lying still for too long. It's that automated sort of stretch that you see your cats or your dogs do when they get up from lying down. When you wake up in the morning, you probably do it while you're lying in bed, and it's not a conscious thing, but it has a name, and that name is pandiculation, and it's something that goes across all species. It's just a way that your body sort of automatically tries to wake you up and get your muscles going and get some blood flowing, and that's why it feels so good to do it. Fact number 2, putting weight on your bones stimulates the release of something called osteocalcin. Now, osteocalcin actually improves memory and may actually help to protect the brain against the ravages of old age. You probably all know that person who's walked all their life, and chances are they're probably pretty mentally sharp. This may have something to do with it. Fact number 3, moving the body with a beat, i.e. dancing, releases dopamine and makes us feel good. In fact, if we do enough of it, it can actually make us feel euphoric. Fact number 4, did you know that a deep belly laugh works the core muscles more effectively than sit-ups? I know which one I would prefer to do. And of course, it also has stress-busting properties, which is fantastic. Who doesn't feel better after a good laugh? Fact number 5, did you know that there is a very strong link between hypermobility and anxiety? In fact, one study found that 70% of hypermobile people had an anxiety disorder versus 22% of non-hypermobile people. And another estimated that anxiety and panic disorders are 16 times more likely in those with hypermobility. If you don't know what hypermobility is, it's those people who seem to be super duper flexible, who can like bend their hand back to their wrist, or can just bend over and touch the floor, or can do the splits or whatever. They can just move their body in ways that most normal people can't do because they have a laxity of collagen in their body, and it's actually not a good thing. Now, I am somewhat hypermobile myself, as I've been told by numerous physiotherapists over the years. And it's funny because I've always had a tendency towards anxiety, and I've had some depressive episodes in my life as well. And when I discovered something like yoga, and when you're in a community like the yoga community, you can kind of tend to be attracted to doing more stretching because that's kind of one of the things that is common. And I think probably a lot of people with hypermobility are drawn to yoga because they are naturally flexible. The problem is that doing that makes things worse. Not only does it make your hypermobility worse, it can actually make those mental disorders worse as well. What people with hypermobility like myself should be doing instead is actually more strengthening work. Because the more we can strengthen our muscles, the more supported and stable our joints become. I certainly prioritize strength training these days, and honestly, I have never felt better or more mentally healthy than I do right now. So if that sounds like you, might be something that you want to look into as well, and you might want to try to avoid those exercises that make you even more bendy than you already are. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this book club video. I'm going to put a link to this in the description below. And the next book that I'm going to be talking about in my next video is going to be this one, 4,000 Weeks, Time and How to Use It by Oliver Burkeman. So when I do my next book club video next month, this is the one that I'm going to be covering. If you want to check that out, make sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss that one. And you could always grab it and read it with me as well, which would be fun. Make sure to give me a big thumbs up if you enjoyed this one and found it helpful. I will catch you in the next video. If you would like to watch something else, check this out. It's a video that I made about 5 healthy habits that will change your life. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back again soon with another video. Bye for now.